Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz Love Talk. It's Tuesday and it's a snow day. So kids are home. So God bless y'all. God bless y'all. When I left the second hour, I was talking about Lucretia, who in 1638 Kate was the first African American, first enslaved person. She wasn't even an American. The first African enslaved in New Haven, Connecticut. And there was a dedication of a corner with her name on it. She didn't have a last name because slaves tend to not have had last names. So when I found out about this, and I just recently found out about this, it wasn't like I grew up knowing this or anything like that. I just found out about it. And it just got me thinking about how I've walked the same streets that this woman probably walked, in 1638. 1638, and we never think about slavery in 1600s, 1700s, we never think about it. And so, and I know we don't think about it in relationship to Connecticut at all, because there's this myth that northern states were freed states, and that just was not true. I went to a Juneteenth celebration last year in like in the New London area and Old Saybrook, and they had like, I don't know, some ridiculous amount, like 15,000 enslaved people or some old mess. And that was quite telling and quite interesting. So the threads and the threads and the roots of slavery and enslavement is very deep here in Connecticut and in this country, but in Connecticut. I don't think we do enough to talk about it. I don't think we do enough to elevate it. I was at the New Haven Museum when they were talking about the 1831 college that could have been the first HBCU in the country, but it was thwarted by 700-4. It's like 700 townspeople and Yale people and 4 abolitionists in favor of. And this was at the time of William Ladson and the folks from the Dixville Congregational Church, who were prominent freed Black men at the time. And I think about that too. I think about, like, I want somebody to do a play or a reenactment of what that time must have looked like and felt like, because these were freed men in the midst of enslaved men, Black people. And what that must have looked like. And Mr. Ladson lived in Worcester Square and is responsible for the Long Wharf as we know it. There's a statue for him that sits over there in the Yale grounds that was done by Dana King in Oakland, who just finished up the Huey Newton statue for the folks in Oakland. So I think about those times and the ways in which they must have had conversations, and the ways in which they tried to move an agenda, and the ways in which they tried to sort of have some agency and autonomy in the midst of around enslaved people. And it could not have been easy being a freed man with the threat of being captured or kidnapped loomed all the time, because that happened too. So I think you just had to be careful all the damn time, even if you were free. I'm just freaked out by that. I am wholly freaked out by that. Freaked out, not in a sense like I can't believe it. Freaked out that what it must have taken for people to sort of go about living their lives, working, becoming self-sufficient, and free and buying freedom for other people and family members, like that must have taken a great deal. I'm in awe of that, of the commitment that Black people had to get free, you know. That is just in the face of such abomination of slavery, hatred, and not being seen as human. Uh, I'm in awe of the tenacity of people. There was no belaboring or even if it was belaboring, how hard life was. People had to sort of keep it moving. Like they had to sort of survive. And so survival meant, you do what is expedient and necessary uh to stay out of harm's way. So so I'm thinking about Lucretia. I'm thinking about all those folks that, that were here. I think that's why I gotta go tour the cemetery. I gotta go take a stroll through the cemeteries because that's where I wanna the Grove Street Cemetery. And I think that's where I wanna be buried, in that space. I wanna go take a tour, because there are lots of prominent Black people in that space too, you know? And I lived here all my life. I never really paid attention to the cemetery. I only knew the wall because, American Linen sat on the other side of the wall, and we lived in Churchy South, so we would catch the bus or walk, from we would walk there to American Linen. And so we'd always have to pass by the wall. It never dawned on me that to think about it as a cemetery. And I've never been in there. And it wasn't until I was at the Schwartzman Center and I was upstairs in Woosley Hall, above Woosley Hall, where they have created this whole wellness place for students. And I was standing up there overlooking the cemetery. I've never seen that view, that vantage point before. And that was just a couple of weeks ago. I was in awe of how big the Grove Street Cemetery is. I've just never paid attention to it, like it's right there in plain sight. So I was just in awe. So I'm gonna go take a tour. I think sooner rather than later, so that I could get a sense of where I want to be in there. I think that's where I want to go. I want to stay in New Haven, no matter where I am, whether I'm living in Kigali or whatever. Send my remains back to New Haven, and back to New Haven I go. That's what I think that's what I would like. I would like that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens if we can get the wishes done. So I think when I was talking to Mike Moran about it, it's not terribly expensive to to buy plot. I don't have a spouse, so I don't have to worry about that. Um, and they're always doing tours. So maybe I get Mike Moran to give me a tour, on some lovely spring day. I think that's what I want to do. They have their own website. So, uh, so the New Haven, Connecticut Burial Ground opened in 1796. I think I talked about this before. It's the oldest cemetery in the nation, designed as a city of the dead. You had me a city with named avenues and cross streets, a National Historic Landmark. It is also the first chartered burial ground in the United States and the first to be arranged in family lots. Leave it to Connecticut. So I'm fascinated by this. I am fascinated. So it has its own board of directors. The proprietors of the Grove Street Cemetery are represented by the standing committee, which oversees the operation of the cemetery and supervises the management of its finances to ensure the continued fiscal soundness of the cemetery. So what happens if it's not sound? Dig up everybody? I don't know any of these people. Oh, I do. Members of the standing: Charles H. Long, Gerald Gabe, Lloyd Suttle, Eleanor Babbitt, Regina Starolis, Ann Calabrese. We know Ann Calabrese. Charles Ellis, we know Charles Ellis, Judith Hackman, Lorraine Siggins, and C. Michael Tucker. And then there's Friends of the Grove Street Cemetery. And the Friends of the Grove Street Cemetery is administered by an elected board of directors composed of persons committed to the organization's purposes. I think I want to be on that board. I don't know how I get on that board. Mike Miranda's the chair. John Deming, Benjamin Sandweiss, Cordelie Benoit, Tina Burgett, Darlene Casella, Henry Dina, Channing Harris, Karen Krochmel, Millie Langenhausen, Sandra Markham, Jill Snyder, and Charles Warner Jr. So I know them. This is fascinating to me. Fascinating to me. Let's see, what's the history? So I read the history, but the Grove Street Cemetery is the first chartered burial ground in these United States. It succeeded the previous common burial ground, the New Haven Green. That I did not know. Wow. After severe yellow fever epidemics in 1794 and 1795, the Green was simply too crowded to continue as the city's chief burial ground. I did not know that the Green was the burial ground. I knew people were buried behind those churches, but I didn't know the Green itself. So in 1796, a group of New Haven citizens led by U.S. Senator James Hillhouse planned a new cemetery on a location at the edge of town. So I guess that was the edge of town over there on Grove Street. So their efforts were officially recognized in October 1797, when the state of Connecticut incorporated the cemetery as the new burying ground in New Haven. The first burial took place on November 9, 1797. So the layout of the cemetery appears to have been unique for its time. It was arranged in lots for families. Contemporaneous cemeteries were more commonly laid out for random burials. The grounds were also divided to give space to parishioners of the three churches on the Green. Strangers who might die in New Haven, the indigent persons of color, and members of Yale College. The Green continued to be used. The Green continued to be used intermittent, but to a lesser extent. The last burial there occurred in 1812. The stone grave markers on the Green were eventually moved to Grove Street. Some were used to mark out the boundaries of a burial sites in this cemetery. A great many line the cemetery's rear walls in alphabetical order. I have to go see this. The Grove Street Cemetery antedates the expansive and distinguished cemeteries of Père Lachaise in Paris and Mount Auburn in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Not long after its opening, it was already shown with pride to foreign visitors. Look at our cemetery. Timothy Dwight, the president of Yale, commented in 1811, I have accompanied to it many foreigners and many Americans who have traveled extensively on the Eastern continent, none of whom have ever seen or heard of anything of a similar nature. An exquisite taste for propriety is discovered in everything belonging to it. No plot of ground within my knowledge is equally solemn and impressive. Even this solemn location, though, has had difficult times. By 1830, the wooden fence had failed to prevent the cemetery grounds from becoming a thoroughfare subject to vandalism. So I guess they had a different fence that people was cutting through. Is that trying to, instead of walking all the way around, it's like, let me just climb the fence and cut through. Those who valued the cemetery wanted a place for quiet reflection and a dignified environment for the repose of their families. Under the leadership of Professor Denison Olmsted, Yale's famed astronomer, the city, the public, and the proprietors eventually raised $25,000 to establish the protection the grounds deserved. In 1845, the present wall with this imposing entrance was completed. You're not climbing that joker. You're not climbing that wall to cut through. That wall is high like a fortress. Architect Henry Austin designed it in the Egyptian style favored at the time. I did not know that either. Woo, there's some history for you. So now when I look at this wall, I'm gonna look at it very differently. So in the Egyptian style, 1845. After organizations of Evergreen Cemetery in 1849, the title New Burying Ground in New Haven was modified to New Haven City Burial Ground. By the 1870s, however, the site was familiarly called the Grove Street Cemetery, and the name has since become commonplace. So people would say, the New Haven City Burial Ground, and then people would go, "You mean the Grove Street, the one over there on Grove Street?" I know exactly how that went down. We do it all the time. The building immediately inside the gate was built in 1872 as a chapel so that services could be held in inclement weather. Now, I've never been in there, so I don't know what that is. I've only seen, when you drive by, you see the gate, you see the opening, but I've never really been in there. So the building immediately inside the gate was built in 1872 as a chapel so that services could be held in inclement weather. Its only decoration just under the eave is a gilded bee symbol of the soul's release from the body. This I have to see. This Victorian structure now serves as the office of the cemetery superintendent and assistant superintendent. So I guess you no longer get to have services in there because they took it over as an office. Foliage in the cemetery has undergone an extensive evolution from the days of James Hillhouse. Hillhouse prized trees. He conceived the extensive plantings that gave New Haven its title, the Elm City. Oh, so he put all them damn elm trees all over the place that didn't last. For the cemetery, he chose Lombardy poplars along the main streets, but these were dying by the 1830s. Therefore, when the new walls were built, new shrubs and trees, chiefly evergreens, were planted. Photographs from the 1890s saw tall evergreens within the walls, but today the trees and shrubs are more varied. Ice, snow, and high winds have damaged and destroyed trees, especially old elms and oaks. Tree replacement is ongoing. Okay, so, you got to just keep putting in new trees as trees die. Grove Street is an urban cemetery. I like that very much. Its geometrical pattern echoes the city of New Haven's 9-square layout. Now, that I did not know. I did not know that. The cemetery's paths give easy access to horse-drawn vehicles and automobiles. Can you imagine? That must have been a sight to see horse-drawn carriages come through and the early days of automobiles. It allows no room for a grove of trees. Space for burial sites is maximized. Extraordinarily varied markers from obelisks to sarcophagi to the simplest gravestone decorate the cemetery. The history of New Haven with its many themes, crises, and accomplishments can be traced in Grove Street Cemetery. So it's like, it's a historical place that you can get history from. Among the internationally renowned persons interred here are Eli Whitney, the inventor, Noah Webster, the lexicographer, Josiah Willard Gibbs Jr., scientist, Lyman Beecher, abolitionist and prohibitionist, O.C. Marsh, paleontologist, and Lars Onsager, Nobel Prize winner. Persons important to the American life are numerous. Roger Sherman, the only person to have signed all 4 basic documents of American sovereignty, including the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Walter Camp, father of American football. Jedediah Morse, father of American geography. And S.E.B. Morse, painter and telegraph inventor. Dr. Worthington Hooker. Now, I guess that's the school named after him, Worthington Hooker. Worthington Hooker, father of American medical ethics. New Haven's history is represented by industrialists, clergy, military figures, lawyers, physicians, and Yale presidents and professors. Mary A. Goodman, the African-American woman who gave her life savings to Yale Divinity School to educate African-American clergy, is buried here along with African-American Civil War veterans. Roger Sherman Baldwin, who argued the case for the Amistad slaves imprisoned in New Haven, and Professor Josiah Willard Gibbs Jr., who deciphered the language spoken by the captives, are also here. Okay. So at their website, there's a short video clip about the Grove Street Cemetery founding fathers, which was directed by Carol Evans, who I know, Carol Evans. You could buy the DVD. And then there's a short video clip about the cemetery's early history, taken from the documentary Grove Street Cemetery, City of the Dead. Another one by Carol Evans. So that's pretty cool. Very, very cool. Okay. That's a lot of history. There is a lot of history for a cemetery. I don't know if all cemeteries have this level of history connected to it. And then all the people that are buried there, which is incredible. You know, I mean, I just read off a few, but they got a whole list of folks, you know. And so let me see. I'm gonna keep looking because I want to oh, and they have a publication that they put out too, which is interesting. So if you want it, you can, and you want to send articles, you could do it. So let me go to frequently asked questions. It asks the question, when is the cemetery open? Well, is the cemetery open to visit as a place for personal contemplation and reflection? Are burial plots available? What is the cost of a burial plot? Okay, are there answers to this? I wonder if oh shoot, I can just click on. In general, the cemetery is open from 8 to 4, and the office is open from 9 to 1, Monday through Friday. So, call them, see what's happening to verify hours in case something is going on. Visitors should note that entry time is 3:30 p.m. The last time you could get in there is at 3:30, because the staff has to go around the grounds and secure the cemetery by 4. Okay. Yes. Is the cemetery open for personal contemplation and reflection? Yes. Many people who live or work in the area visit the cemetery for just such a purpose. I love it. Yes. Are burial plots available? Yes, many are available. So for more information, you all about availability and fees, or write to Celie Jennings, and it will get back to you. What is the cost of a plot? As of November 2020, the price for a single grade plot is $7,500. Half grade plots are $4,000. I don't know what a half grade plot is. I think Mike Moran was trying to explain it to me, and it went out of my head because it was freaky. So I'm gonna have to ask him again. Is perpetual care included in the price of the plot? Yes, the cemetery staff provide perpetual care as part of the purchase price. I wonder if I could have a rose bush put on my plot. Uh, are there groups of plots available? Yes, although the number and availability may change. Generally, there are from 2 to 4 contiguous plots available in certain locations in the cemetery. Uh, uh, does the cemetery accept for burial the remains of someone whose body has been cremated? Yes. So maybe that's where the half plot comes in, because you wouldn't need a whole thing if you've been cremated. That's interesting. What is the relationship to Yale University? The Grove Street Cemetery has no affiliation with Yale, uh, though a number of Yale presidents, alumni, and members of the Yale family are buried in the cemetery. I mean, it's a city cemetery. If you're gonna be buried in the city, because I don't know of any others. Well, I guess there are other cemeteries, but yes, of course there are other cemeteries. Hamden, uh, over by Southern. I think there's one even in New Haven, the one that's over off the boulevard. Does the individual have to be connected to Yale in any way to be buried in a cemetery? Nope. Uh, does an individual have to belong to any historical organization or genealogical society to qualify for burial in the cemetery? Nope. Are military funerals permitted in the cemetery? Yes, military funerals are held in the cemetery each year. Such burial services are often accompanied by a gun salute. Huh. Okay. Well, that's a lot about the wonderful uh Yale Cemetery. So now I must get myself there and take a tour, and then I'll come back and talk about it some more. That's that is the idea. Uh, and they even have all the inscriptions of the people, like the Revolutionary War markers and stuff like that. And I mean, these people are very young. Oh, some of them, lots of them are very, very old too. Like even in the 1700s, people seemed like they lived a long time, you know. Interesting. Whew. But when the yellow fever came by, because you could see lots of children, um, lots of children. I'm starting to see that, and I guess that's to the yellow fever that just came through and did people in. You know. But fascinating. I'm glad I got to spend some time talking about the history of the cemetery, and to know that there are black people buried there. You know, just gives me pause, and it really makes me want to go. So I'm gonna make it my business as soon as the weather breaks again. Like I want a warm day, you know, and go and stroll uh, and see it, and to see the horticulture. 'Cause it says when you walk through the Grove Street Cemetery, you take some time to look at the handsome trees and plants, as well as the monuments with famous names. And you listen to the leaves and the birds, and you meander in the dappled shade, and you take in the fragrance. Grove Street is truly an oasis definition, a green area in an arid region, a refuge in the outer ring of downtown New Haven. Entering through Henry Austin's Neo-Egyptian gateway, you may be struck by the abundance of trees, shrubs, and flowering plants of many, many kinds. And in fact, the entire 750-foot long planting bed behind the cast iron fence on Grove Street was always reserved for plantings, not burials. So, in the lore of cemeteries, this decision is attributed to the idea that living things should not be recalled in the city of the dead. And in fact, in many communities, planted cemeteries predate and set the tone for the first parks. Even in the early phases of development, James Hillhouse was concerned with the appearance of the cemetery and wrote that he thought Lombardy poplars and willows would be appropriate. Early 19th century horticultural literature also promoted evergreens as the appropriate signature plantings to characterize cemeteries, as had been done in Britain generations before. Austin's watercolor rendering of the gateway and flanking fence shows the space filled with a variety of plants. And although no tree in the cemetery is original to the 1796 date, there are a few handsome, huge old trees which date to at least the middle of the 19th century, when money was collected to fund the wall and planting beautification, such as the big horse chestnut on Maple Avenue. Note, a number of the major trees have identifying tags, and a handout is being updated describing these. Over the decades, as many of these trees have succumbed to advanced age and disease and storm damage, there have been periodic efforts to replace them. The proprietors and friends of the Grove Street Cemetery have raised funds and implemented replantings a number of times. In 2002, a plan was developed adding 2,000 ginkgo trees and several thornless honey locusts planted on Myrtle Avenue and Central Avenue, respectively. A good stand of locusts already shades Central Avenue, and the new ones were added to this graceful alley. Ginkgos were chosen because they are a handsome, enduring, pollution-resistant tree associated with sacred temples in their native China. It has a lovely small fan-shaped leaves and turn a brilliant yellow in the fall. Another good season to visit the cemetery and take in its beauty. I'm excited about this. Unfortunately, we are now losing all our ash trees, the victim of an imported Asian pest beetle, recalling the loss of elms in the mid-20th century. Replacements of other species have been provided at one such location, and others are being planned to fill these gaps in the tree canopy. I love this. So, well, anyway, I'll get back to this after I go visit, and I'll let y'all know. So for now, I'm on my way out. Thanks for letting me kind of virtually walk through the Grove Street Cemetery. I think I'm just gonna put some money together, save some money, and that's where I want to be planted. I like to be interred there. I think I'd be quite happy for a lot of reasons. So I'm on my way out. Y'all be safe out here and enjoy the snowy day. I'll be back tomorrow.